This very land is the pure land, nirvana. This very body, the nirmanakaya, the body of Buddha.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity. This is Synchronicity.
And welcome to episode 51 of Synchronicity. My guest today is Lama Surya Das. We'll get to Lama Surya Das in just a second. I'm sure some of you even know who Lama Surya Das is. What we just heard was a set from Burning Man, this year's Burning Man by Viken Arman. And as a bonus, I am attaching that entire file, I think it's almost 3 hours long, to this episode of Synchronicity. So if you want to download that, go for it. I'm also going to put in a link to the SoundCloud, but if you don't want to use your data and you want to download it, you can do that. So segue alert. I somewhat planned this out, but just to let you know how I stumbled across these mixes. I am a huge fan, I've pointed this out before, of electronic music, especially a subset of electronic music that sounds kind of like that, merged with a little more up-tempo, and that mix picks up. It's 3 hours long. Worldly, eclectic sounds, but also with a steady beat, 4/4. That's my kind of thing. So I look forward every year to Burning Man. I've never attended, I've never went, but there's a crap load of really, really good music that goes on there on a multitude of stages and camps. And one of those camps is White Ocean. And this year at Burning Man, an interesting thing and a not so good thing happened that really also divided kind of a large subset of people who attend Burning Man and kind of believe in the 10 principles, which is kind of what keeps the community together and is the foundation. Burning Man's been going on a really long time, and only until recently have there been these huge kind of what are known as sound camps, which are essentially like mobile and stationary clubs in the open playa of the desert. So this year what happened was the White Ocean camp was vandalized by, it has turned out it's been disgruntled people who had worked with the camp and setting up their stuff for whatever reasons. I think they weren't retained this year because they went with different people, and it turns out those people came back and basically cut all these wires to the camp, glued people's doors shut, and basically just kind of like hooliganized the whole thing. Apparently there's always been bandits out on the playa, so it's not the weirdest thing. But what is interesting is this then very quickly got out on a lot of big blogs, like even like CNN blogs, like big publications started picking up this story and saying, oh, this happened, this was such a big deal. And a lot of people were really upset, not at the vandals or the people who did this, but White Ocean, this particular sound camp, which I believe was founded by Paul Oakenfold and like a Russian billionaire's son, regardless of who founded it. And I mean, listen, Paul Oakenfold was one of my first favorite DJs back in the day. What a guy. Never could mix that well, but had amazing songs until I saw him at a festival, an Area 1 festival at Meriwether Post in Maryland. And I went into the DJ tent, and I have never been more disappointed and disillusioned with a hero or idol of mine at a time than after he played what he played. It was just the cheesiest of cheese. Didn't like it. Regardless, White Ocean has consistently put on some amazing parties around the world, including at Burning Man, and the sets and the music that comes out of the White Ocean camp is consistently some of my favorite music. So regardless of who started it, I always look forward to the sets that come out of there. I'll also mention Robot Heart, really great stuff. I mention it because a lot of people were on the side of the vandals who attend Burning Man, right? And this surprised me. It's like how I thought that the general ethos of Burning Man is a communal place where people can get along and support each other and, just come together, essentially. All of the pictures, all of the stories, I feel like I've know everyone who's ever gone to Burning Man at this point. That's the vibe I get from what it's supposed to be. So to see so many people say, hey, like, this is great, fuck these people, they bring in their private chefs, they bring in their plug and play camps, they're not really participating in the spirit of what Burning Man is. These guys are assholes, they're exclusive jerks. I don't know how much of that is true or how much of it isn't true. What I do know is, regardless of what you think of people, I would think that you wouldn't want them to get vandalized, right? Regardless of the situation. And so that was very disconcerting to me. So this week I saw White Ocean released another statement basically saying, listen, we found out who it was. It was never our intention to not support Burning Man, they quoted how many meals they served to people who weren't part of their camp, and said they were generally a very welcoming place. It appears that they don't let some people into the camp, especially if they're supremely intoxicated. So they're kind of operating like a mini club, right? And anyone who's been out to clubs knows that can range from totally reasonable bouncers and people letting you into completely out of line, just douchebags on a power trip. So I'm sure there is a cross section of that at White Ocean at Burning Man too. Okay. I bring that up because it was weird to me that people who would be attending Burning Man, I was shocked at how many intelligent people it seemed were saying, well, they deserve it. What? I don't get that. I really don't. Even if you think Donald Trump deserves, the worst things, he's still a person. I know he seems completely deluded and totally off kilter, but he's still a person. People are still people, and you have to understand the situations and conditions that can lead people to become who they are. All right, let's get to some other stuff. This week book giveaway is back, and I am giving away a copy of Lama Surya Das's book, Make Me One with Everything. I think this is what I'm going to start doing. When people come on and they have books, and it's around the time I'm doing a book giveaway, I'm going to give away their book. I also encourage you to totally pick up a copy of this, because you'll hear Lama Surya Das is one of the most eloquent and erudite people who can take subjects and topics that are relatively complicated and make them very immediate and present and easily digestible, which is a very cool thing. Okay, what else do we have going on? Alan Watts, you heard in the beginning. I don't even actually know. Did you hear in the beginning? I don't know if I put the ad in this week, but if you did hear in the beginning, this episode is brought to you by the Alan Watts Foundation, and it is brought to you in the sense that if you go to the Alan Watts online shop, link in this episode page, link on the podcast app. If you're listening to this, the link will be right there. If you go there, listen to some talks, find some talks you want to get, download them, use the code SYNC, SYNC, all capitals at checkout. I was going to say check off. I don't know why. Use it at checkout and you get 30% off. Oh, I realized now I said check off because I was conflating those two things. Again, if you use the code SYNC, I'm excellent at ads, by the way, right? Amazing at this, I know. If you use the code SYNC, all capitals, at checkout, you get 30% off your first order. You want a recommendation of what you would check out? I don't know your price range. I don't know your budget. But for me, the extended seminar series is a hell of a deal. There's, I think, like 100 hours, something like that, of talks. So you're pretty much good to go on talks for an entire year. I think that's a great value. And you get 30% off. So it's not a bad deal. Okay, that's it. Keeping it short. I've been running up and down the East Coast. We're looking, hey, New Yorkers, we are going to be moving there soon. Most likely, nothing is final, but we're looking at a place in Red Hook, New York, not Brooklyn, 2 hours north of the city in Dutchess County. So I'm just throwing that out there. Send good thoughts and vibes. Let's see this thing go through. But I've been pretty busy, so I'm keeping this relatively short. We're coming up on a year next week. So thank you to everyone who has listened. This is already turning into a record month for Synchronicity. I really appreciate the continued support in the form of listens, subscriptions, donations, reviews, ratings, all of these things. They really do warm the cockles of my heart. Cockles, gonna not use that term anymore. But without further ado, here is one of my favorite teachers, one of my favorite people, Lama Surya Das. Thank you again for coming on. This is really, I think it's going to be a treat for everyone involved, me included. So let's start. There's so many interesting places we can start with this because one of the reasons I think you're a fascinating, let's say, character in kind of this whole consciousness, Buddhist mindfulness world is you have a lineage that I'm particularly interested in from the Buddhist side, which I want to find a lot more about. But you also have this cool intersection with Nyingmapa, which
is my first guru.
Exactly. So
1 and 2 while he was still alive in India.
Right. So can you talk a little bit about how I've heard this story, but how you got introduced to Nyingmapa Baba, how that fit in kind of into your life, and then how you've noticed, I know this is a long, complicated question, but how that's also integrated in with your studies and practice of Tibetan Buddhism.
Well, that's a great question and jumping off point and a good story, and makes my heart warm, think about the guru, Nyingmapa Baba Maharaji, as we call him, the great Dharma king. He was really good to us. And he gave me my name, of course, Sur Das. I'm one of the Das brothers, like Krishna Das and Ram Das and Bhagwan Das. And we were all there at his ashram at the same time and knew each other. Still do. And I just saw some of them, just last week. And anyway, when I graduated from college in 1971, I went to India, and I had learned about Zen Buddhism and meditated a little, and Hare Krishna chanting, and Carl Jung's East-West thought and writings, and Joseph Campbell and other people, and went to the East to learn more about meditation and yoga and find truth or God or peace or become peace instead of fighting for peace like an enraged Buddhist in the 60s, become more like an engaged Buddhist, becoming peace, as Thich Nhat Hanh says. And I landed in India. I went overland through Greece and Afghanistan and Turkey and buses and trains and hitchhiking, Volkswagen bus, and through the Khyber Pass in Afghanistan into India. And I met Mirabai and Krishna Bush there in Ladakh, in Kashmir. And by chance, I heard their names, so I found who I had known slightly in Buffalo. And at University of Buffalo, where they were and I was. They were graduate students. And we went on a pilgrimage in the Himalayas for 7 or 8 days to a holy cave. And then they were telling me about their guru, Maharaji, Nyingmapa Baba. And also we were meditating together. They had learned mindfulness and loving kindness, metta meditation, vipassana and metta, from Goenkaji, Mr. Goenka, the Burmese Indian teacher that we all studied with in his 10-day silent intensive courses. So it was already, the mixing pot and the melting pot. And we weren't trying to become Buddhists or Hindus. We were looking for something universal or beyond that's in all things, but transcends any one sect or religion or place. So they told me about that, and then they got a letter from Goenkaji's secretary. There was going to be a meditation course in the desert in the state of Rajasthan, Western India. So they left, and me and my buddy Ken that I was traveling with, he said, we said, that sounds way too austere, being silent for 10 days and no meals after lunch and meditating 12 hours a day. And so we didn't go. And then a few days later, we were sitting up there doing what people did in the 60s. Of course, it was 71. And in India, Bam Shankar and all that, and getting high and listening to the river and eating Indian food and trying to do yoga and meditate. We didn't know how to do it. We said, what the hell are we doing here? Why don't we catch up with Guru and Krishna and go to that meditation course and meet the other, people like us that would be there and hear more about these things and Maharaji and, beautiful things. Because it's so heart-opening to hear stories about Maharaji from the beginning, from Mirabai and Krishna. And, of course, I'd read Bob Ram Dass's great bestseller from 1969, Be Here Now, all about the old master in the blanket, Maharaji. So we went and we hurried and we caught up and got there at the last minute and went into the 10-day meditation course. And then we met a bunch of other people. Of course, it was silent, but afterwards, and we met people and then asked, where are you going, what are you doing? And some of them were going back to Maharaji's ashram, and we wanted to meditate more because we were just getting into it. So we went to Goenka's next course, and then he went home. He'd been in Asia a few years. He went home to St. Louis, and I went to Nepal to pursue Buddhism and meet lamas. So that's when I met my first Tibetan lamas right after that in 1971. So it was all mixed together. And sometimes we saw Sufi saints there in India or Hindu swamis of the different sects. And so it was one Dharma, which it still is. Dharma means truth or living spirit, not just one religion. So that's how it came to me. But of course, being young and questioning, my Lama Kalurimche used to call me, of course, in Tibetan, my nickname was the Ocean of Questions. We had questions like this or that, or can we do both? Is there a both, or what is it?
Right.
And this went on for a few years, and we were always discussing that. And some teachers said, you should do one thing, and some were more eclectic, and some had done only one thing themselves, like a Wankaji.
Mm-hmm.
Wanka's teacher, Manindra, who was Joe Goldstein's teacher, had done many things, was learned and eclectic and universal. So some of the Tibetan Lamas are very Rime or non-sectarian universal, like the Dalai Lama, and my teacher was Kalu Rinpoche and Khyentse Rinpoche, Karmapa. So I was practicing meditation and yoga and fasting and chanting and vegetarianism and celibacy, and became a Buddhist trainee in a monastery and eventually a monk in 3-year retreat and Lama training. But I used to go back to Maharaji, to his ashram.
Yeah. So
and some weeks there with him and with the bhakti and devotional chanting, and that was really heart opening. Otherwise, I think I would have been a much more dried up kind of Buddhist scholar, kind of enlightened only from the eyebrows up, and not very or coming from the heart.
Well, it's like the merging of this is one of the interplays between Buddhism and the Bhakti tradition, which I find so fruitful, is you have this clear clarity and wisdom from Buddhism. Not that there is not a tremendous amount of heart and compassion there as well, but the Bhakti is so steeped in that open-heartedness. And I think this fusion it's almost, this is probably not a great term or analogy, but it is like the union of emptiness and bliss, which is what is described in Buddhism as kind of the essence of that. That is everything we see and experience. So
that it's kind of like mind and heart, or heart and soul, or body and mind, embodied.
Yeah.
Bliss and richness, and then mind, clear and calm and vast and wise.
Yeah.
In India, traditionally, it's called, there are different paths for different folks. So it's called Bhakti and Gyan. Bhakti means devotion is a way beyond yourself or to God or to the highest. And Gyan is more like wisdom, knowledge, philosophy, meditation as the way. And of course, both are intermingled, but some more focus on one, like Krishnamurti was very Gyan.
Right.
Or clear and mental. Well, he himself did yoga, by the way, but every day, but he didn't teach it. And then people like Ram Dass or Maharaji or others are very, Krishna Das, very bhakti, very devotional. Although, of course, they meditate and they study and they're wise. So there are different types of spiritual personalities and different paths. Just like there are people who are more physical, so then yoga and the 8-limbed yoga, Patanjali is a good, not just physical yoga, but it's a good path for them. So I found my way in this intersection. Really, Tibetan Buddhism has and our lineage of the Kagyu and Nyingma has a great, from the Milarepa and so on, has it in Kalu Rinpoche, my teachers, late teachers, has a great lineage and practice of devotion and guru yoga, we call it. Union with the guru as a way to return to your Buddha, your inner guru, your own Buddha-ness, your Buddha nature. So that's very consistent, congruent with the Bhakti yoga of Rinpoche Baba and Vishnu worshippers and Hanuman Bhaktis that he's part of, like Lord Hanuman, who says, when I forget who I am, Lord Ram, I worship you. When I remember who I am you. So that's just like Tibetan Guru Yoga, not worshiping the person, but the Guru as a portal to the oneness beyond the separation.
Yeah, so this is something I'd love to talk about because I just finished a book that one of my favorite books I've read on Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism in particular, which is Mind Beyond Death by Dzogchen Ponlop Rinpoche. And there's so much, such a great practical handbook and kind of exposition and explication of what goes on in the after death states and kind of other bardo states within life. But one of the things in the book is this practice of deity yoga, and how the guru and lineage is such an important part of Tibetan Buddhism. And I find this to be fascinating because I think when most people, I mean, I don't want to generalize, but when a lot of people hear about Buddhism, there's a few things that stick in their mind. One is life is suffering. So people hear that and immediately like, I don't really want to do that. Although when you dig in and you realize that's just stating a fact, it's not like life sucks, there's no hope. And then the other thing is
the diagnosis, and then the other half is the cure.
That's right. That's exactly right, which I think is can be easily forgotten because people don't want to hear life is suffering, right? And then the other thing that I think throws people off, depending on their theistic inclinations, it could be a good thing or a bad thing, is that there's no gods. Buddha is not a god. Buddha literally means one who is awake. So it's not actually saying he's a deity himself. However, in a lot of different sects and paths and courses of Buddhism, there is this practice of deity yoga. There's these manifestations that actually involve very intricate visualizations, specific. Yeah. So talk about a little bit about that. I'd love to hear more. Yeah.
Divine realms and visions.
That's right. Yeah.
Gods and goddesses, if you want to use that word, it's not the right Buddhist word because we don't see them as outside of ourselves or outside of his mind. The universal Buddha mind is part of it. But yeah, as I see it, big words like God and also truth, reality, these like placeholders for something most of us have barely got much deep into, and it's hard to conceptualize. So theistic and non-theistic is okay to talk about, but like in Hinduism, Vedanta that worships Lord Shiva, but it's a non-dual traditionalism is very much like the middle way philosophy, the great emptiness of Buddhism, where there's no separation. Because Buddhism takes the other side, like not two. Hinduism says one. Different is that if you look into it. So, and then people were accused of being a secret Vedantist in Tibetan Buddhism. Or Acharya, the founder of Vedanta, was accused of being a secret Buddhist, like not by his own peers and critics and other philosophers because of this. Because I think if and this is just one image, all the paths are like climbing up a spiritual mountain. I know this is unidirectional. It's much more multi-level than that. But if they're all climbing up a spiritual mountain, I think all of them meet at the apex. Like all the sages kind of have a kind of singular, I don't know if I say understanding, it sounds too mental, but realization or
knowing or something. Yeah.
If a theistic saint realizes oneness with the ultimate, whatever he or she calls it, and a Buddhist master saint, Zen or whatever, realizes the Dharmakaya or the ultimate, how could that be different? It's the universal principle, cosmic, there's no separation and we're all part of it. It's immanent, whatever you call it, it's immanent in each of us, it's indwelling, but it's transcendent over all of any of us. So it's not just egotistical to awaken the Buddha within or to find the Godhead within, because when I find it in moi, I then perceive it better in toi.
Right.
Then you can naturally treat others as they would like to be treated, as you would like to be treated, because they're not different, separate than you.
Yes.
It's a way to love. Even that wisdom opens the heart of empathic, warm compassion, kindness, love, giving, and all the virtues.
Yeah, and they do work in tandem, as you're saying. And I will say it gets harder to be worse to people when you have that realization. I wouldn't necessarily say it gets easier to be nicer. Maybe it does, but it gets harder.
It's more natural because it's like your right hand doesn't attack your left hand. Everyone's watching.
Right, that would be what
doesn't need outside rules or police security to protect because it's yourself. So when we recognize each other, since you mentioned theism, if we, as God's pseudopods, like an amoeba has these false appendages that stick out and then come back, then we see, underneath it all that we're all interconnected and kind of one, but you see a unity in the diversity.
It's true.
In the diversity. And then you love others as yourself. You see yourself in others. As Buddha said, when I see myself in others and others in myself, who would I harm? Who would I abuse? Who would I exploit?
Right, because it's going to be yourself, essentially. And it does...
You're beloved. in the best case.
Right.
More people are in widening concentric circles, not just your one or two or three beloved family or whoever.
Right. And this is one of the things that and we're talking about getting to these kind of universal truths, which I know is a very conceptual way of kind of talking about this stuff. But one of the ways of getting to this stuff is through meditation, right? And what's interesting to me as I've been steeped in a lot of Ram Dass's meditations, a lot of Ram Dass's friends' meditations, ranging from vipassana to metta. But I've really, really had an affinity and a strong connection to Tibetan Buddhism in particular, long before I even knew anything about Bhakti or even really who Ram Dass was. And Padmasambhava has always been an interesting, the first mantra I ever learned was Om Mani Padme Hum. And I don't even, it was in something so disconnected from the field I'm in now, it almost like it came to me from somewhere else that I can't really pin down. So what I would love, I rarely get a chance. I've had some Tibetan Buddhist teachers on here. One Lama, Lama Somo, you're the second Lama to come on. I would love to hear from you. Kind of, can you explain to me what Dzogchen is and then also what Vajrayana is? And I love that you were also talking about, this is another thing in Tibetan Buddhism that I absolutely love, is that everything is already here within us. So when we get angry, as I understand it in Tibetan Buddhism, anger is not something that's supposed to be pushed away. There is an inherent clear wisdom in that, and that we uncover that and purify it rather than kind of changing it into something else, or that it's not there or it's something outside of you that you have to correct the behavior. So could you just, though, before getting to that, what is Dzogchen? Like, how does this fit into the cosmology of
Well, you already said what it is, and that's why teachers need to be here to highlight that you already have everything you need. Like you said, this is more or less quoting you. Tibetan Buddhism, or Vajrayana says everything is already here. So, I'll quote from the scriptures, since I'm such a traditional guy, but also an eclectic American Buddhist. The great Zen master, Hakuin Zenji, in his song of Zazen, the Zazen Wasen, sings, "This very land is the pure land, nirvana. This very body, the Nirmanakaya, the body of Buddha." So he ain't just talking about his body, friends. So that's the message of Dzogchen. That's translated as the natural great perfection, or the innate great completeness. It is all here. We just have to recognize it. So my own root Lama, Kalu Rinpoche, always used to quote from the Vajra Tantra, the laughing diamond tantric scripture, non-dual scripture, Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism. We're all Buddhas by nature, not Buddhists, God forbid. We're all Buddhas by nature. We only have to recognize who and what we are. We only have to awaken to that fact. So that's like the shorter, direct path. There are different paths in Buddhism, like in religion and in the world. You know, there are roundabout ones, there are shortcuts, there are safe ones, there are dangerous ones. You know, like there are different ways of skiing. Skiing straight down the mountain ain't necessarily the best way, and you might have a crash landing. Fastest way, but probably not the best way. So, and there are different ways of climbing up a mountain, straight up or back and forth, you know, in stages and so on, gradually. So in Buddhism, since you asked about that, there's the two or the three yanas, and there's the basic Buddhism that's safe and moral and monastic and ethical. And
is that the Hinayana?
Well, that's a pejorative term, yeah. Theravadan, the traditional elders, the original Buddhism, the root vehicle, or the root path, as my teachers call it, to avoid entity, which means small, then the Mahayana, which means big or universal. I see. Including life and lay people and, you know, body and other things, and less monastic. And that's more, the original one is more about renunciation of that suffering and the causes of it, and purification and purifying away your negative karma and vowing not to do unwholesome things, is the way we put it in Buddhism. And then Mahayana is more about bodhicitta and emptiness, like the awakened, compassionate heart, and seeing through the illusion, the dreamlike illusion of life. And then Vajrayana is more about transformation. It's more dangerous, rocket fuel path.
That's why I think I'm gravitating towards it.
Yeah, right. Well, it's predicted by Padmasambhava. You mentioned the founder of Tibetan Buddhism and the head of our Dzogchen lineage, who came to Tibet from India in the 8th century AD. He said that Vajrayana and Dzogchen was what was needed in the end of times when people didn't have time to go through all the stages and study everything for many decades. And they could get right to the nature of mind teachings, how to look directly at the mind, not study everything about purity and philosophy and transformation and cosmology and so on.
Like direct experience.
Yeah, so introduction to the nature of mind, we call them Dzogchen, and Mahamudra, the ultimate perspective. That's kind of another. Mahamudra and Dzogchen are called the highest practices of Tibetan Buddhism. So it's the mind teaching, or how to awaken to your Buddha mind in this life, not gradually after many lifetimes until enlightenment, as it says in the Theravadan and Mahayana traditions. It also means it's like the Vajra diamond shortcut, we call it the Vajra shortcut. It means it's more tricky. It means you have to rely more on your guru than just on the scriptures and checking things out gradually.
That's where the deity stuff can really, and the guru yoga can,
And guru yoga comes in, so there's different schools have different more reliance on the teacher or less on the teacher. So Vajrayana, it's like you can teach yourself how to play guitar, but if you have a guitar teacher, he shows you the shortcuts and the tricks and adapts it to you and your handy size and all. So it goes better, faster, surer.
That's a great example. And I mean, I love music as an analogy. I'm a musician. I grew up playing, and I actually taught myself guitar, where I was taught saxophone, and my proficiency on saxophone is significantly higher than it is on guitar. I can, pretend to play guitar and get myself through a lot of different things, but my knowledge and, clarity of understanding is certainly better from the stuff I was taught by people who had been doing that their whole lives. Okay, so I want to ask you this, because this is something that I don't want to say grapple with. I have my own views on it, but one of the things that is fascinating to me are the 6 realms of existence, the samsaric realms, which we can go into in detail, and then also the pure lands, right? These realms that supposedly after death you can access, as I understand it, potentially real, quote unquote, places that are actually in existence. So from your understanding or your experience, I understand that the realms can also be processed as mental states that we all go through, and that I'm abundantly familiar with. I have direct experience up the wazoo with all of those 6 states.
Yeah, like the hungry ghost state. It seems like mythology, but think about addicts.
Right.
Addiction is the hungry ghost state.
Or Donald Trump. This is one of my favorite things. The Dalai Lama, I think, sent a coded message not too long ago where he was, they're like, what do you think of Donald Trump? And he goes, oh, very small mouth. And then he started miming. So I'm like, whoa, is the Dalai Lama taking shots at Donald Trump? And I think what he was intimating is that Donald Trump is a hungry ghost. He's got a teeny little mouth and a huge appetite that he can never satisfy or fulfill. So I wonder if he was actually saying that.
No. But they are, states of mind, but also see, you said in quotes.
Yes.
That's the important part.
Right.
That this life, in quotes, is real.
Right.
Like, if you have a dream at night, now I'm really asking you, just play the game.
Yeah.
Is it real?
So my personal...
You really have a dream, or are you lying to me?
See, now this is my...
Dream. A dream isn't as real as the daytime, but...
I think it's a real place.
It's a real dream.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just saying. So there are different levels of reality and experience. So if you see a rope on the ground in the dark and you jump because you think it's a snake.
Oh, Vedanta! You're going Vedanta on me.
Did you see a real snake? No. But did you see a real rope? You really saw something.
Right.
And did you experience a real fear? Yes. So everything is like that. It's very subjective and interconnected with outer and inner circumstances and conditioning. So similarly, when you fall asleep, you dream according to your your karmic conditioning, right? You dream about whatever. Let's say you see your friends or grandparents who may be dead in your dream, not mine.
Sure.
You don't know. And similarly, they say when you die that you're entering other, your light body or your mental inner light, not body, your
Yes.
continuity, your spirit would be the word in English probably. Goes on and doesn't die and has its body spin, kind of its conditioning, like a whirl in the river. It's just water, but it's a whirlpool, or
Right.
it's a ripple. You can see it going down and transforming into the next form. So that's how you think about it. And the Pure Lands, the paradises, first of all, this was not in basic Buddhism.
Right.
Theravada, more Mahayana came later, but Buddhism was an old tradition, path of enlightenment, religion, if you insist, and a philosophy, way of life. And so it's evolved over 2,600 years. And the Mahayana came, a few hundred years after the basic teachings of Buddha, the living teacher, 2,600 years ago. So people were having experiences, not just after they died, but you can also access these Pure Lands while you're alive, in your vision or deep awareness, meditation states, let's say, higher consciousness, or maybe drugs, I don't know, in different ways. And these states, the consciousnesses, the states, the experiences that go with it. So this is so there are different realms of existence. Like some people live a sort of animalistic realm.
Right.
It's about food, sleep, and whatever it is, fear and greed, and, want what they want when they want it, can't put it off for later. Other people live a more divine kind of way, but it's still very pleasure and sensual oriented, So the 6 realms, as is laid out, is just kind of a general map. There's higher and lower, and according to your acts and intentions, then you get different results.
Right.
So that's the idea, that you have some agency where you can have self-mastery and go in a better, quote, higher or deeper or truer direction. You have some choice. And it's not the wind of conditioning that just blows you away. Like, you don't have to be like a dead leaf blown away by the wind. You can learn how to sail and navigate better.
I like that.
That's where these practices come in: mindfulness, awareness, self-consciousness, introspection, purification, transformation, accumulating good karma, like virtues by generosity and patience and being loving and helpful and altruistic and so on. And then, it's like if you wake up angry in the morning, you start stubbing your toe and having some you get feedback from the environment.
That's right.
So if you wake up on the other side of the bed and you're more cheerful, things might go better for you, people more be nice to you.
Right.
Of course, bad things happen to good people, and vice versa. But I'm just saying the general principle is according to the karma, the conditioning, the causation of the where you are. Like plant in the northern hemisphere, plant in the fall, harvest. Plant in the spring, harvest in the fall.
Right.
The southern hemisphere, the opposite. It's still appropriate. Plant in the right. The law is still the same. Plant in the right season, harvest in the right season, not backwards. If you want certain results. Yes. So that's the law of karma, and how the Buddha said people seem unhappy, life is difficult, unenlightened life is full of suffering. That's really the right translation. There is another life, the enlightened life, that's full of bliss and peace and harmony, and that's what we strive towards and work towards together.
And I love that, how basically karma is a logical explanation of how things are and come to be and were, even to some extent, depending on your conception of time. But what I love about this too, in Buddhism and in Hinduism as well, is that there's an aspect where you don't have to be at the mercy of all of your past actions and all of your karmic stains and seeds. And that is that transcendent element that we're trying to uncover and kind of look at our life situation. I mean, we could take the exact same situation. Someone has a family member who dies. One can look at that and say, oh, why me? This is horrible. This is such a horrible thing. Why was I born? Now I have to experience all this loss. There's so much. And another person can look at the same situation and experience the same pain, the same suffering, the same emotions, but say, you know what? This is a catalyst for me learning about myself, about life, about the impermanence of everything, and what a beautiful experience it was to be with these people. And that's
right too. And I should live now and
right.
it off until I quote retire or something.
Right. It can
Life now.
exactly. It focuses you into the here and now, which is something, as I understand it, across all philosophies I've read, all religious scripts, texts, thinkers, is they talk about this essential element of the present moment being the real experience of what is actually going on. And that's where the power and opportunity lies to actually experience and transcend what kind of our normal, just kind of going through this, what feels like a continuous set of moments in time is actually just one moment that we're carrying with us from place to place. So, okay. So I also want to, before we get to like the practical applications, because I know that's going to be a huge part of this.
That's interesting. So let me just say, first of all, about time and the moment.
Yeah.
I wrote a whole book about this called Buddhist Standard Time.
Yes.
Awakening to the Infinite Possibilities of Now. And in it, there's some things in there that you don't find in Western Buddhist books, like about Tibetan Dzogchen idea of the sacred fourth time, or what Christian mystics call the divine time. And the example is Buddhists talk about the three times, past, present, and future, which we can all understand. I'm not going to go into relativity theory or anything, just general consensus. Linear
time, yeah.
Moves from, like, let's say left to right, past to present to future, not backwards unless you're watching the Time Machine movie or something. And then, but that's horizontal time,
right,
where everything's born, ages and dies and deteriorates. But there's also the vertical dimension. That's what the Christian mystics call divine. For every moment of that horizontal time in which everything changes and turns to dust, or whatever you think of it, revolves, is bisected by the ascendant time. That's the holy fourth. That's the holy now, the divine now, the moment of Dzogchen, the natural great perfection. But it's always now. So if you're now say something that's challenging, it's very straight. I give this to you, as a gift. You won't hear this everywhere, but it's right out of the Dzogchen Fifth Instructions. The nowness, awareness, is the Buddha within, an authentic Buddha within. Nowness, awareness. So when you're totally now, there's no you, because you is a conglomeration of memories and conditions. In the now, there's only the bead of the mala, of the rosary. There's no string connecting you to the other beads.
Right.
So you are free of the past and future in the now. And there's no you, because it's the conditioning is it's not like you have conditioning.
Yeah, right.
The mala is the string holding the beads together. If you're only in the now, there's no string or continuity. Of course, things are flowing, but in the now, the ascended time, the divine time, it's like everything stopped. You're off the wheel. That's called deathless nirvana. That's called Dharmakaya. There's no time. The path takes place in time, but the realization is beyond time and infinite or eternal or timeless, whatever words you use. Yeah. So we practice being more now, cultivating nowness through mindfulness and advanced mindfulness, without goal, without watching the time, awareness style. Like, awareness is not necessarily mind. You observing anything, like in mindfulness, is just naked awareness of pure being.
Right.
And it's a little abstract, but
which
is the whole thing.
Well, we get glimpses, I think, of that nowness. I think that's this is one of my favorite things. I mean, it happened. My most present and direct experience of this was my first introduction to psychedelics, when I realized that this self that I had known as Noah, for my 15, 16 years of life before I had taken LSD, didn't actually exist. I clearly...
You and your...
That's right.
The surround had constructed together. Construct.
Right, and it was just these... Right. So this is why I always put the quotes in, real reality in quotes, because our experience of moment to moment and second to second is something that feels incredibly accurate, right? We don't question that. Most people don't question that. Even if someone brings it up and says, hey, you're not really experiencing this the way you actually are, whatever that means. It's just not how things are actually going when you actually investigate it, which is why there is these practices of vipassana and also shamatha, where it's just this resting awareness where you just experience what's going on rather than trying to impose a certain kind of schematic as to what's going on. I imagine why these are taught so and encouraged that people practice these, because then you get more direct experience with what's going on. So this concept of nowness, this concept of time, what I'm always interested in is these other realms, right? These pure lands, these other overlapping dimensions of reality. What I've noticed in my life, albeit not that long, in my 33 years on the planet this go around, I've noticed as time goes on, I don't know if this is a function of aging or if it's a function of or a symptom of our time. It seems as though many of these dimensions are starting to peek through more and more frequently. And I say this not only from a personal experience, of which I have plenty of anecdotal evidence, but also collectively. Like, I'm seeing this more now. I think a great example of this is this current election cycle. This is, I don't know how else to describe what's going on. I have a few terms. Psychedelic would be one of them, bipolar in the truest sense of the clinical term. But it seems as though the constructs that have been kind of guiding or seemingly holding together society and culture over the past, let's say, 2,000 years, it seems like the mechanisms, if not already broken, are in the process of breaking. And as that happens, these moments or dimensional realities seem to kind of slip in, a piercing of the veil, if you will. And it seems like it's increasing. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that, if that's something you've noticed in your life or in this current time, and then how that kind of interfaces into what Tibetan Buddhism would say about these experiences that we're going through right now.
Well, I can't ignore your mention of the local election that we're all suffering through. The 4-year itch and all. But I would describe it, maybe I'll just pick on the debates. Usually I watch the debates, but I had to watch the last 2 debates.
Me too, yeah.
Gruesome as it was. It's kind of a combination of unreality TV
and
electile dysfunction.
That's a great term.
But moving right along, I think, we all have innate spirit, whatever word you want to call it. Buddhists call it the innate Buddha nature or the unconditioned, the Jesus heart. I don't know, the Atma, within. Christianics is called the Godhead, the piece of God that's in you. Jews call it the spark of God. Each soul is the spark of God, and the spark is the fire, is the same as the fire of the sun, of the whole. So we all have that. So of course it breaks through, and even with children, you see this. Not to over-idealize children, but because they're not blank slates. And
I have a 5-month-old. I know they are not blank slates. So,
but they have their own natural spirituality,
right.
And often they see things maybe in the church, or maybe in nature, or maybe at home in a dream, or on the floor in the nursery, and they say, "Mommy, I saw, I don't know, Jesus crying on this, that," or whatever people say, or light coming from the top of the, church, or I'm just talking about church, people tell me about kids, and Mommy says, "Oh yes, they're very nice, but don't tell people, they'll think you're crazy." So we kind of clamp it down, just like socializing them and educating them often clamps down their psychic and intuitive natural abilities, as we try and make them fit into the, educational curriculum and so on, and fit in and standardize. So I think it does show through and break through individually and collectively. So same with the culture and the time. So if I said since the 50s and 60s, there's been a lot of this kind of spiritual renaissance or east-west cross-fertilization in the Western countries, Europe and America, and the first world countries that have time for this. The third world countries are trying to get a washing machine or a car or their kids to college. That's different. So there's been a lot of this in the last 50 or 60 years breaking through. But of course, the spirituality is an evergreen subject. It's been going on for millennia and centuries. And I think the Tibetans were talking more like that, about the cyclical rather than a linear upswing, like things are always progressing up, or the spiritual, the world's becoming more spiritually aware or anything like that. But I think, look at the yoga and mindfulness movement and vegetarian and health food and nonviolent activism, kind of, and the word compassion, kindness that's come into our discourse. I heard Hillary Clinton talk at a fundraising dinner this summer. She mentioned loving kindness. I mean, nobody mentioned that 5 or 10 years ago. It's come in.
Right.
She would have said kindness or,
Compassion, maybe, yeah.
Maybe at best compassion,
Yeah.
But, yeah. So these Eastern thoughts and values are having a positive effect and contribution and cross-fertilization. So I think that's happening. But it's also a dark time of, divisiveness and politics and fear and maybe the Pacific Rim rising and the colonial powers or whatever, the first world countries not having such hegemony, being all the superpowers as China, India, and Japan rise. So there's a lot of fear also about what we're losing,
Right.
what's going to happen to the generations, not to mention the global environmental degradation.
Which no one seems to be talking about at the upper levels. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So if we're not thinking about that, what's happening, we're not being very wise or clear,
Right.
kind of fiddling or twiddling our meditative thumbs while Rome burns. So I'm always for an integration of the outer and inner,
Yes.
contemplation and action, and being very mindful or thoughtful or reflective or collaborative and exploring together and trying to awaken together and on outer, inner, and subtlest levels. And that's what Tibetan masters also talk about, not just the physical, but also the emotional, the spiritual, and then the subtle, the spirit, really inner, invisible, realizing the timeless invisible, whether the environment degrades or not, we can still realize the timeless nirvana or heaven or
Right. I mean,
and heaven right now, heaven or hell is in the mind, as the poet Blake says and mystics say. So we can realize the Pure Land now, not just after we're dead. But you keep asking about. You've asked twice about the Pure Lands and Paradises. So the Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhist Buddhology, not really theology, the theos, but the Buddhology of it is that these are like special realms that enlightenment's kind of sort of generated. That's not just the 6 realms
outside of it, right?
samsara that we're in, high or low, the conditioning. So it's kind of outside it, but a little closer connected to it. Like the Western Buddha field of Amitabha and Avalokita, of compassion, infinite light, that the Pure Land schools pray to be reborn, and it's considered in the West just where the setting sun is, so it's not invisible, it's not that far. So it's kind of in this world, but not of it. Again, we have direct access now to our higher consciousness, and that's the important thing that our Dzogchen non-dual tradition of non-separation always returns us to. So the knowingness is, in a way, the ultimate Pure Land of here, not later, if and when.
Right, and that's why I think I've been bringing it up, whether consciously or subconsciously, is I think that's an important concept. I think when we hear about a Pure Land, I know when I was first reading about this probably 10 years ago, I conceptualize it like a heaven type place. This is somewhere after you're dead, after the bardos, you're going through this, then you can be reincarnated there. But I notice exactly what you're talking about. These realms are accessible. They absolutely are here and now. And if you've had the direct experiences of touching on any of these things, then it gets imprinted on you. You don't forget. Someone can't tell you, well, no, it doesn't actually exist. It's not actually accessible here and now. That's just, what these people are saying. And that is what I think is such an important aspect of all of this, is that, and I remember a long time ago, I was on LSD. I was in a hotel room with a bunch of my friends, and I was having a discussion with one in particular, and she was like, I was drawing a picture or something, and she's like, do you think that, she wasn't on LSD. She was like, do you think that you can do whatever you want to do? And I was like, not only do I think I can do whatever I want to do, physical limitations aside, anyone can do whatever they want to do. And I fundamentally, it wasn't even like I believed it. It's like I knew it. Exactly.
That's
And
the beauty of it.
Yes.
When you have the actual experience, like a breakthrough, a spiritual epiphany, a genuine one,
Right.
with some kind of high, with my initials, Lama Surya Das.
Yes, LSD. I do.
I can't really say I've never inhaled, but, the thing is, when you really experience something, like before, I didn't know there was a there. Growing up in Judeo-Christian suburbs,
Right.
it was like cultural Judaism, not really experiential and mystical
Right.
Judaism. So I didn't really believe in God and so on. But once you experience that there's a there's something transcendent yet imminent, then nobody can tell you it's not there. Just like when you recognize your, I don't know, mother or father in a crowd at a big stadium, nobody can tell you that wasn't them. Recognizing your true Buddha nature, you recognize not just that you could do anything, but anybody could do anything. So that's how you get to through the personal, the finite, you get to the universal, the transpersonal.
Yes, and this is there's a wonderful book by Marie-Louise von Franz, who is a disciple and student of Jung's and an amazing teacher in her own right, and it's called Psyche and Matter, and it's fascinating. And what I love so much about it is it basically explores empirically and esoterically the connection between inner and outer. And you were saying that this is something that you're fundamentally interested in, as am I. I think this is kind of where I fall, and you can tell me what you think of this. This is what I think. I think one of my favorite Ram Dass stories is, he goes, have you ever noticed how many angry people there are at peace rallies? They're chanting, peace, 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 screaming.
Peace, and it's not far from that to killing for God, like that.
Right, exactly.
Terrorists.
And so that story highlights more than anything else to me the importance of getting yourself straight before attempting to engage in outer experiences. And I also use the example of, like, sometimes maybe if there's a friend or someone who's in a tremendous amount of pain, your natural instinct is to rush and go help them. But if you don't have the tools or skill set to actually provide the medicine for what they need, you can actually go in and create a far more harm than just if you just left it aside until you got yourself straight. So I know that there's a critical importance for the inner aspect. What is fascinating to me is not in an esoteric or kind of woo-woo way that if you change the inside, the outside changes. I have physically noticed in external reality, quote unquote, when you change things inside, it reacts. Outside reality, external reality, whether in the form of people or circumstances or situations or being lucky or being blessed or grace, whatever you want to call it, there is a direct relationship there. And I think we have access to it and we can remember it, but knowing that or even talking about it and realizing it is a fundamentally different way than we are taught or grow up and experience life, which is, we're talking about fundamental transformations in life. So has this been your experience? I mean, I know this is kind of up in your wheelhouse. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's why we, cultivate or practice or strive on the path. We are seekers, and one day seekers have to become finders, not just always stay on campus like a permanent graduate student.
I love that.
So we practice different practices, not just join something. We take the journey. We don't just read the travel brochures. Mm-hmm. Partly it's a journey from the head to the heart and beyond, earth, and partly it's beyond ourselves and including others, and partly it's a journey from the small self and a small preoccupation, a small family, to the universal family, the transpersonal self or being, or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. So I found that the best contribution I can make is to transform and awaken myself, and that kind of helps transform and awaken others. Right. Of course, some people work from outside in, and I've been an activist also, and I try to balance that. But I was a monk, and I did 3-year retreats, and and that was one of the best contributions I ever made. And just even before I ever did anything, because, like Buddha said beneath the tree, in the Zen scriptures, it says, Buddha said, when I was enlightened or awakened, all were enlightened, even in the trees. So, if that's too steep and hard to understand, let me retranslate it for today. This is my own experience. See if you don't resonate with this, everyone. When I am clear, everything is clearer.
Yeah. I mean, that's how else, yeah.
Beyond outer and inner, it's so subjective. It depends on our perception. It's not what happens to us, but what we make of it, how we perceive it, and what we do with it makes all the difference. It's not the cards we're dealt, but how we play the hand.
That's right.
This is just Asian woo-woo saying that everything is a dream. Everything is subjective. And the great Shakespeare said it with his great insights into human nature. Shakespeare said, "There is neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a universal truth.
It's
Of course, if we think different thoughts or ways or expand our mind or become clearer, everything becomes clearer.
It's so true. This is one of the things.
Obscured. We have all kinds of accidents. We can't see what the hell's going on.
Right. Right.
So clearing our windshield or our vision or ourselves and our relations and our life, clearing up our life makes a big difference.
I love this. I've heard it described, and this is a lot to do with perspective, which is I love this. But it's as though if you're wearing glasses and they're smudged, right? You're seeing the world in a different way than if you're clear and you can actually see, which is kind of what you're doing when you're carrying all these, kleshas or things that are put on and superposed. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So just like if you have rosy-colored glasses, like Pollyanna, you see everything rosy, even though it's not. And if you have smoky-colored glasses, you see everything is depressing, even though it's not.
Right, and that is, I think, an interesting. You can juxtapose that or relate that to the 6 realms, which is even at the top there with the devas, the gods. It's still not. You're still in an illusory world because while everything is great and everything is pleasurable and things are going well, you don't really have an impetus to transcend that. You're comfortable, right?
And because everything is impermanent, that won't last.
Exactly.
And then it deteriorates.
And then you're upset, yeah.
And you die, and the gods have long life, but heaven relies, but it ends or whatever. So if you don't go beyond the cycle of this conditioning and causation, then to the timeless state or to the indomitable fortress of wakefulness, as they say in Tibetan.
Oh my God! So
well back.
All right, so I have 4 questions, 3 quick ones, and then one at the end. Here we're coming to the end, and it goes without saying, I would love to have you on again and explore some of these topics too. I love these conversations, and a testament to how great they are. Time is flying here, so I love that. So here are I
can fly too.
Yeah.
If you do what I say, you'll fly too.
I believe it. So, okay, here are my 3 rapid fire questions. What is your favorite color?
Blue sky.
Oh, I love it. What is your favorite number?
1.
I love that too. What is your favorite animal?
Horse.
Okay, cool.
Or dog.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a dog person.
Dogs are great. They're so wonderful. Okay, and then the last question. Can you share one practical tip or something, a practical thing that has helped you specifically in your life with the listeners?
There's so much one could say. The things are not exactly what you think they are. You can't believe whatever you think. You have to look a little deeper. There's more to life than thinking and concepts in the mind, living in your head.
I think that's my favorite practical tip that someone has given. I think that sums up my own beliefs and experiences pretty firmly. That's pretty awesome. Anything else you want to add to that?
Well, I have another one that you don't hear people say enough. So it's a little different tack, but it's been extremely helpful to me. I'll put it in the form of a tiny short anecdote story. At the end of our first 3-year, 3-month, 3-day Dzogchen retreat in the West, in 1984 was the first such retreat in the West. It took 3 years and 8 months. And we had the great teachers, Kinsu Rinpoche and Dudjom Rinpoche and Mershu Kempo, teaching us. And it was great. Not always, easy, but it was wonderful. Cloistered, intensive, Lama training retreat. at the end of that, and some people outside, and I don't know what the people inside, because maybe we were a little more used to these things after a decade or two, and that, but some people expect us to come out and be like able to fly or be like, great masters or something. It's kind of not exactly like that. But unless you really have unbelievable practice and experience, breakthrough. But my own teacher, retreat master who lived there and helped found that center, Tukupeng Wangyo, who spoke English, so this is not just my translation. He was talking about like that, because he knew people outside were thinking, so he went in and out sometimes. And he said, don't expect the struggle to end. That has helped me a lot over the years and decades, not be unrealistic. Because,
I love that.
Life is difficult. Life is full of challenge. Not just life is suffering. Life is also full of joy and miracles and grace. But, the unenlightened life, the conditioned life, the changes in relative time in this body, it's challenging. It's full of difficulties and other things. Anyway, don't expect the struggle to change, to end just because, I don't know, you become a qualified yoga teacher or a 3-year retreat or, anything. The cleric robe doesn't make the saint.
Yes.
And the hairdo or the, whatever doesn't make the master. And quantity and time and, diplomas don't make the realized one and make the difference. You have to have a heart-full, soulful transformation. The more we put into it, the more we get out of it in general.
Well, I love that, and I love that there are people like you who have had the direct experiences and are so adept at communicating some of these things that can seem at times very heady or complicated or foreign, but you can really bring it back down to our direct experience and, the practical applications of this stuff. Thank you.
It's not that complicated. It's fairly simple. It's simple, but we're not simple.
No, that's the problem. We can overly complicate anything. I know that.
The simplest thing isn't enough for us when somebody says, there's nowhere to go or nothing to get. It's not enough.
No, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear it,
Saved us. For some people, that's enough, but not for us. Jesus saved us. It's not enough. We don't feel saved. We're saved.
Yeah.
So it's a search. But I have one more thing to impart. And
yes.
I don't hear this enough, but it's really true. I think of it as being there while getting there every single step of the way, not waiting for the illusory pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
I love that.
Being there while getting there every step of the way, not waiting.
Right, and being a part of it too yourself, so you're not just a distant.
Awakening together, and is there a song about this? Love the one you're with.
Yeah.
Very important. Not the one you don't have.
Right, there you go. And you're with yourself most of the time. So thank you so much for coming on.
It's a beautiful, gorgeous self. It's almost impossible to love and accept others if we don't love and accept ourselves.
That is so true. That's a crucial first step. Again, just going back, I think there are a lot of people who, with very pure and good and open hearts, who find it very easy to help and be compassionate and kind to others. But then when it comes to their own self and well-being, they neglect that and don't do that, because your help and your love and your compassion will be far more effective if you start with yourself, because then you have experience doing it and you know how to react when that happens. So I think that's, I think if we had a 4-hour conversation, we would just be getting more and more deep into the wisdom and beautiful teachings you have to offer. Thank you so much for coming on.
We'll talk.
Yes, we'll talk. We'll talk. Thank you so much. Talk soon.
Pleasure. Good luck with your new house, brother, and take care.
Thanks. You too, man.
See you.
Right, bye. one of the reasons I love Lama Surya Das, hello again, by the way, I'm just jumping right into this, but one of the reasons I love Lama Surya Das is he just is, for someone who he's done silent retreats, he's been to India, all the world around, he's taught and met some of the most esteemed teachers and people you could meet. And he's very just down to earth. He's always extremely pleasant to speak to. And I think that shined through in this conversation. You can rest assured I will have him on again. To the dear listeners who have listened past the music, that music that you heard right there is another little clip from the Viken Arman White Ocean Sunset at Burning Man 2016. As a reminder, you can download that in this episode. I'm going to be looking to do more of these little bonus download things. I think that's going to be cool. I don't know. I listen to stuff. I like it. Maybe you like it too. Thank you to everyone who has rated and reviewed this podcast, who has donated. Really, it really does. I said it at the beginning, but it means a tremendous amount to me. It is validation. I'm really happy to say that the podcast the numbers are going in the direction I want to see them go. Not necessarily for an ego boost, as I point out sometimes, but just showing that this is resonating with people and it's something of value. So thank you to everyone who has done that. Next week, got a real treat for the people who have been asking. Stephen Campman, I'm about to record that in like 2 hours. He's going to be the next guest. He's a repeat guest, father of Mikey Campman, dreams. We're going to talk about Demian. We're going to talk about so many cool things. So stay tuned for that next week. That'll be the year anniversary. That's pretty nuts of Synchronicity. So thank you as always, and I will see you next week.